the book a call feature. I was like, "Well, okay, might as well try and book a call." And couple things that I would be interested in talking about. One is kind of the career that I ended up finding myself being a part of, um, which is I run a OnlyFans management company. So basically, that means I handle the social media marketing for and the OnlyFans account management for adult content creators. Um, and there's kind of a you could say it's like a moral struggle, perhaps, or just a bit of a life decision. I found I have been doing it for the past 4 years, and I'm quite successful at it. I make a good amount of money, but it's not necessarily, the something I want to be doing for the rest of my life, I guess I would say. Um, so it's kind of a question of like, how do I decide when to stop, to switch into something else? Yeah, just I guess that whole topic, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. How did you get into the field and how old are you now?
So I'm 27 now,
Okay.
and I got into the field by, I've tried a bunch of different businesses or online hustles, tried drop shipping, tried day trading. I had a tea business, I had a food delivery business, done a bunch of different things. Came across a YouTube video from like a course seller who was selling a course on how to manage girls' OnlyFans accounts and ended up trying it and ended up being the first time I actually made any money online.
So,
Uh,
sorry, there was somebody who said, here's how you manage online adult content creators. Was it specific to OnlyFans? I guess it could work with any, right?
yeah,
And so you took that, and I mean, obviously, without revealing all of their course secrets, what was it that you needed a course for? Was it just general social management, or was it more specialized to OnlyFans?
it was specialized to OnlyFans, so the course was $99 a month, and it was actually a very bad course. There was nothing really like no real secrets in there, but they put you into a private group with all the other people who bought the course, and I ended up kind of making a few friends in there who we helped each other to be successful. So, in order to be successful, basically, you have to recruit a model. That's step one. You have to find a girl who's actually willing to let you manage their account.
Sorry, now
I,
when you say find a model, do you mean find a model already on OnlyFans who wants you to be the manager, or find someone and bring them into OnlyFans?
it could be either one.
Okay.
Generally, it's easier to find someone who's already doing it. Um, and usually it's not just like a random girl who's not doing any kind of sex work. That's just going to be like, okay, I'll do OnlyFans all of a sudden. Usually, a lot of girls are selling pictures and videos of themselves just kind of privately. It's, I think, actually quite common
Sorry,
for
I'm
girls to
not
be
sure what you mean by privately.
like, let's say there's a girl that has a couple thousand followers on Instagram, she'll get all kinds of messages in her DMs of guys who are just asking for nudes, basically.
Ah, okay.
And it's pretty common that the girls will end up selling them to these guys. So basically, if the girl's already doing that, then going on OnlyFans is just a more scalable way of doing that. The girl ends up on OnlyFans, and then you
Oh, so
know,
yeah, rather than having to do it individually, it's just a collective subscription thing.
yeah, exactly. And the way it works is like you, I don't know if you're really familiar, but like 99% of OnlyFans accounts are managed, and they have a full time 24-hour chat team on the account.
Well, sorry, not 99% of all of them. You would say 99% of the top tier ones or something, because isn't it the case that most OnlyFans models or performers make, 50, 100, $200 a month? So you mean that the top earning ones, most of those, but not most of the millions of accounts as a whole?
Yeah, well, I would say like that statistic comes from like they include all the basically dormant accounts that are not really active. I would say the majority of active creators who are actually promoting it and who are actually trying, it's pretty common to make at least 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 per month. Um, so I don't think it's the case that the average OnlyFans creator is making 50 or $100 a month. I think where that statistic comes from is they are counting like girls who signed up once, had a couple of sales, and then just never
Right.
logged
Yeah.
in
Listen,
again.
obviously, I'm going to defer to your knowledge of the industry, which is infinitely superior to mine. So I guess, yeah, if you take the whole thing and you divide it by the earnings, it averages out. But yeah, as you say, it's dormant accounts or people who, sold a couple of picks and then just left it lying fallow and
Right.
so on. So yeah, the majority of active accounts are under some sort of management, and that would be what you do, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Now, do you do it individually? Do you have a team? Is it a corporation or LLC, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So it's an LLC, and we have a team. So I currently have almost 90 full time employees. I kind of have two separate branches of my company. One is the branch that handles the full service management, I call it, where it's promotion and chatting. And then I have a second branch that handles just specifically chatting, uh, which is you know, basically a 24-hour chat team that is on the account that talks to the leads, the guys when they come in and sells new content.
And this is, I mean, the typical thing that you think of course, is that there's some, hot OnlyFans girl and you think you're talking to her, but you're talking to some third world guy for minimum wage, but you don't necessarily know that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. And
Okay. So they're presenting themselves as the women, but they're not the women.
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And, it could be sometimes it could be obvious, but it can also be fairly convincing sometimes because you have a collection of voice messages that the girl made. Oftentimes, the guys will ask, they'll say, hold up two fingers to prove that you're real. But we have all that, we have pre taken photos holding up however many fingers the guy wants. Um, and it's on her account. I think a lot of the guys don't really care. They kind of know deep down that it's not really the girl, but I mean, real girls have very little patience to be talking to these guys all day long. So,
Right.
yeah,
And
basically, you run a team.
how, I'm so sorry. Finish your thought. My apologies.
No, yeah, you run a team that basically impersonates the girl on her account, and you sell content. That's the
So when she's online talking, or the guys are online pretending to be her, is it like, buy my video, buy my t-shirts or like merch, or is it that sort of stuff?
yeah. It's usually buy my video and picture. And yeah, that's usually what it is. Pictures and videos of.
So for OnlyFans, there's a subscription model, and then there is personalized or individualized videos, or videos that are unavailable on the subscription model. Is it like that?
Yeah, so the majority of the money in OnlyFans comes from the direct one-on-one sales. The subscription is, I'd say under 15% of
Oh,
the
wow.
total
Okay.
revenue generated. The way I run it even is I run free pages specifically. That's kind of my strategy. So there's no subscription fee. It's free to join. And we just get lots of people who join and then we filter through them in direct one on one sales. So,
When you say filter through them, what do you mean?
well, you can imagine since there's no subscription price for them to join the account, you get a lot of freeloaders who are just joining to see what they can see for free without buying any uh, content. So 90% of them are not going to buy, will never buy. And we're just kind of looking for the spenders among that group of people who join. Um,
And what do you, that's really interesting. So, because it's funny, because most of my listeners don't donate. I can't go through and filter for the spenders because I don't have that kind of for sale stuff. But what are you looking for when you're trying to figure out who's actually going to spend?
um, well, honestly, we treat everybody basically the same. There starts with a rapport building phase where we just get to know a little bit about them. We kind of want to make them feel like we're friendly and nice and that we're open to developing some sort of long term emotional relationship with them where we're like their online girlfriend. And then eventually we hit them with a first offer, usually a low priced offer, $5 to $10. And that's kind of the moment of truth where we realize, is this person a spender or are they a time waster? They're known as time wasters in the industry because they waste the chatter's time and will never buy. And usually we'll give them, if they don't buy on our first uh, qualification purchase, we'll let the conversation go and then maybe try again another day. If multiple times, two, three, four times, they don't buy, we'll put them on a time waster list and never talk to them again, basically.
So, how long does the grooming is the wrong word because it's a really sinister sounding word, but
Yeah.
how long is the sort of exploratory phase or the rapport building, probably is a better way of putting it? How long is that phase before the initial ask for the $5 to $10 video or picture is made?
I mean, I would want it to be as long as possible. But the
Sunk
challenge
costs, right?
that,
So, the more they sink in, the more likely they are to buy, right?
yeah, exactly. And like the more they feel they owe it to you for like taking up your time talking to them. But it is difficult to train my sales team, my chatters that they're dealing with, hundreds of people per day.
Hmm.
They get a little bit lazy sometimes. And if the guy doesn't buy right away, they'll tend to get rid of him. But really it can be like, anywhere from 5 to 30 back and forth message exchanges. Um, Usually within the first 1 or 2 days.
Hmm. And
Um,
it's not specifically sexual content, it's getting to know the person, giving them the quote girlfriend experience. Is it something like that?
yeah, exactly. I mean, some guys will come in and they'll turn the conversation sexual right away. But other guys just kind of treat it like they just want to chat and, yeah, have a more safe for work, non explicit conversation. So it does depend. But yeah, it's not necessarily a sexual conversation right away.
Right. Okay. And for somebody who'd be in the top 3 to 5% of producers on OnlyFans, what number of these conversations? You said couple hundred a day, but can it get higher? I mean, what volume of conversations are being simulated?
Yeah, so I was managing a creator who was in the top 0.01% on the platform, which is one of the top 300 accounts. Her account was doing about $300,000 per month in revenue, and she would get 30,000 new fans to the account per month, which is 1,000 per day. Um, and what was your question exactly? It was
Oh
how
yeah,
many?
just at the top tier, how many simultaneous conversations are going on?
Um, yeah, at that top tier, it was, you know, 20 plus simultaneous. conversations. And we would even need to staff the account with more than one person at a time to handle
So
that many
sorry to interrupt. The
conversations.
number that
Yeah.
seems low to me. I thought you were going to say like 20,000 or like
Oh,
simultaneous conversations.
simultaneous?
I'm sorry.
Well, I guess I mean like literally simultaneous, where it's like the inbox has 20 conversations waiting. It depends. Do you mean like within a 5-minute period, a 10-minute period? How
Let's
many
say over the
conversations?
course of sort of a 24-hour period, how many conversations roughly would be going on?
Mm. On this 0.01% account over a 24-hour period, it would probably be 1 to 3,000,
And
something
how
like
many
that.
staffers does it take to run that?
For that account, it would take 8 full-time staff to
Wow.
give 24-hour coverage. Yeah,
Okay. And that's, of course, you want reasonable turnaround and so on and fairly instantaneous responses and so on.
exactly. Yeah,
And
exactly.
are they paid flat? Are they paid, like a salary?
They're
No,
getting
not really. But
commission.
would they be paid as a commission based upon what they sell? Is that why they're
Commission.
impatient to get the sales going?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So some companies pay hourly plus commission. I personally pay flat
Eat
commission
what you
rate.
kill, whatever you sell, you
Yeah,
get a piece of.
and the commission's 10 to 15%
Okay,
of
got it.
the sale.
And when you started, um, how do I ask this nicely? There's no way to ask nicely. So, did you have a lot of experience with OnlyFans, so to speak, before you got into management? I mean, did you sort of know the scene and the world as a whole?
Not really, honestly. I mean, I'd never been an OnlyFans customer. I had no money, so I wasn't gonna be spending any money on uh, OnlyFans. But I knew one girl from my real life who was an OnlyFans model, and she didn't work and lived pretty nicely. So I always knew she must be making money, but I never knew what was going on behind the scenes. So it was definitely very eye opening to realize there's a huge industry of basically men talking to men behind
It's a little
like
gay, obviously. It's a little gay
yeah,
to be flirting with
yeah,
endless men. Yeah.
exactly. So it was very surprising, and yeah, it kind of made me like understand why like pimps were a thing and why women weren't just kind of engaging in sex work on their own. And there's kind of always a guy who is involved in the operations side of
I
the
know.
business.
Listen, you know the industry again infinitely better than I do. I think the pimp analogy might be limited because the pimps are often violent and keep them hooked on
For sure.
drugs, and that's obviously not your thing. You're just doing the
Yeah,
social media management stuff and chat and merch management, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, physical prostitution has oftentimes non-voluntary elements to it, which is a key, my sense of morality. I have a pretty strong, I'm a voluntarist, however I believe all human relationship needs to be mutually consensual. And that's kind of the most important factor in deciding is something morally acceptable or not. Um, so of course, if there's a pimp prostitute scenario, if it is 100% voluntary and all the pimp does is find clients and potentially even make sure that the clients are not dangerous
Mm.
towards, you know, I wouldn't consider that to be an immoral scenario or relationship. However, the type of women who are often doing sex work are vulnerable, drug addicted, potentially trafficked. So there is a lot of non voluntary interaction that occurs. Um,
And
so
of
yeah,
course, they often
it's
come out
not
of
a
these
perfect
really
analogy.
terrible childhoods with sexual exploitation or abuse as children, and so there's all of that for sure. Now, with regards to OnlyFans, I'm going to ask what I think are the general questions, and then we'll get more specific, because I know you want to talk about the moral issues, which I really, really appreciate. How much of the OnlyFans success is based purely on looks or body shape or whatever it is, and how much is talent? And I think that the talent element has got to be kind of high, because whenever you get that Pareto principle, like 99% of the money going to 1% of the people, it's not just the looks, it's not just the body type, it's not that there has to be some sort of seductive element or talent or whatever the magical it factor and so on.
Mhm.
So what is it that gets a woman into that top tier?
I mean, I would really say it can be difficult to say. It's definitely not like purely conventional attractiveness and looks. The way you described it with like an it factor, an X factor, I think is a big part of it. Often it has to do with them really fitting well into a particular niche. Um, there are like very overweight girls who manage to be successful because that's kind of they dominate the overweight girl, fat girl niche.
The chubby
Um,
chaser planet.
exactly,
Right, right.
which I guess there's a big market for, not particularly my type, but uh, so often it has to do with fitting into that niche. And I mean, really, what determines the big success is can the girl go viral on social media in the same way a normal influencer will? So there's a girl, for example, who is really into Pokemon and she does Pokemon card unboxings and that goes viral on social media. And that's how she, you know,
Oh,
makes
hang on.
a
So
lot of
she
money.
does non-sexual content to gain interest as a whole, and then there's the OnlyFans pitch, I guess, under in the description or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. In the bio of her social media profile. And because you can't really promote yourself in a sexual way, the social media platforms will ban your account. So you need something that you're doing to get attention. So there's girls that do podcasts and are entertaining on live stream, and that will get them a lot of traffic. So talent can be important. I would say some kind of viral skill. Like there's one girl who does pottery. She's very good at pottery, and that's how she gets her traction on social media. Um, but then there's also ways of getting traffic that don't require any skill from the girl, such as the agency behind her will have a phone farm with hundreds or thousands of phones running Tinder profiles. You can imagine having 3,000 Tinder profiles, all in every city in the United States. And those profiles go to an Instagram account where there is a link to the OnlyFans. And the girl basically does nothing. She just has a team, the agency behind her, who sets up this 3,000 Tinder profile setup to collect traffic. Usually, in those cases, the agency will get a pretty high percentage, the majority of the money. Um,
Okay, yeah. So I mean, thinking in the acting world, it was like 10% for agents and so on. I know this is more than just being an agent. So, what sort of percentage, based upon what sort of services offered, are you, or is the average management company getting?
yeah, usually I would say on average 50-50 splits are common. And then the agency will usually bear all the costs associated, will pay all the staff. But if the girl is like a big Instagram model, agencies will take less because she's bringing all her followers. It's pretty easy for the agency to make money. But if it's a nobody creator, then the agency will need to take more. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, 50% of 10,000 is better than keeping 2,000 for yourself. So,
exactly. Yeah.
and so in terms of driving traffic towards the OnlyFans account, I guess the social media companies, they don't want you doing sexual content, obviously, but they don't mind the OnlyFans links. Is that right?
Yeah, for the most part, they don't mind the OnlyFans links.
Hmm.
They are actually tightening up a little bit right now. Instagram is in the process of kind of trying to force out the OnlyFans creators so they no longer allow it in the bio of the profile. You have to put it in the highlights of the profile, which is a little bit
Hmm.
less visible. But for the most part, they allow it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because, of course, for social media companies, sex drives a lot of stuff, but at the same time, sex can lower the reputation, particularly among parents of the children who are, or the underages who are involved in that. So, I mean, from a just pure financial standpoint, I can understand the tension of like, well, we don't want to sexualize the content, but if we don't sexualize the content and the next guy do, they make twice the money or something like that. So,
Yeah. They're, making whatever profit maximizing decision. Um, I'm sure they're figuring it out. What will make them the most.
and when you moved into the space, obviously everybody has an expectation of what it's going to be like, and then there's what it's actually like. And what was it? What was the most surprising stuff for you when you began to move into the managing of this space?
Um, it was a lot harder than I expected it to be. Um, Requires a lot of work. It is very competitive. Uh, and yeah, I expected it to be easier to go viral and to make money, but I mean, I really work all the time, every single day. I haven't taken a single day off in years at this point. And
I mean, even to do laundry, right? That's why you're topless. And I'm just kidding. Okay. So,
yeah,
so it's hard work.
exactly.
So it's harder to go viral. And of course, you've had now, years in the business. Again, they say this in the movie industry, like nobody knows what's going to be successful or not, and it's a real dice roll. But what have you gleaned or gotten out of what makes something viral in this space? Or is it
What
all
makes
just
them?
sort of bought and paid for?
Um, what do you mean by bought and paid for? Like,
Well, because of course, if you're going to do the 3,000 Tinder accounts in every city, then you're going to get a bunch of people going to the OnlyFans or to that account, whether it's on Instagram, other places, and I assume that's more likely because it's going to push it up in the algorithm as a whole. So some of it you can not 100%, but you can certainly fuel with the sort of bought and paid for stuff. Other stuff tends to be more organic. So for the stuff that's organic, have you figured out any pattern? I mean, I guess that's part of your job to some degree, but it's a moving target. But
it's
what
very
is the stuff that
difficult.
most goes into making something viral?
Yeah. And I mean, I would say there's really just no shortcut. Like, the content has to be genuinely entertaining to watch and good. And that's something I'm struggling with a lot right now is, you know, many of the girls I manage don't have any particular skills or talents. Um, so, they really have nothing about them that can go viral easily.
Hmm.
So they're stuck with kind of doing tricks in the algorithm where they'll, you know, pop on screen and they'll be like, stop, stop, wait. And so that tricks the viewer into watching for an additional 1 or 2 seconds, which pushes the, watch time metric up and helps the algorithm promote it more. But I would say there's no shortcut. Like, you want to do things that are genuinely interesting and good. So, for example, there's a girl who's hiking the Pacific Crest Trail from Mexico to Canada, and that is just something people would genuinely be interested in watching. And so she's going very viral for doing that challenging, difficult hike
Is
by
she producing
herself.
content for OnlyFans along the way, or is it just to drive
Yeah,
the existing
I'm
content?
sure. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Watch out
Definitely.
for
So,
poison ivy, young lady.
yeah,
That can be a
exactly.
real witch and a half. Uh,
Um,
and when you look for, what's your search process like for looking for new, hopefully viral top tier talent?
um, it's all referral based at this point. I'm actually not trying to take on any new talent at this point. Really focusing on my chatting agency, which is most of my clients are other agencies hire me to handle specifically the chatting on the OnlyFans page
Oh,
itself.
so somebody offers a wide variety of services. You're the one silo that they outsource to do just the chatting because you've got it all worked out and down to a fine art.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I
Okay.
just have the whole team set up, and I have a middle management layer with recruiting and training. It's pretty well established as a company. So, and that's to me just much more scalable than the full service company where you're working directly with models, and you have to, buy a new phone for the model's accounts to put her accounts on. You have to talk to her directly. There's a lot of like one-on-one work that comes along with bringing on a new model versus just adding an account to my chatting agency. I
Hmm.
just hand it over to the chatters, put a team on it, and then it's done. It's much more scalable in terms of the amount of time that I personally have to spend in order to get the account up and running. So, um, yeah, I'm not actively recruiting new models.
And what's the rough number of, is it dozens or hundreds or some other number in terms? You don't have to give me the exact number, of course, but just in
Yeah.
general, the number of women that you're managing?
So for the full service, I manage 6 currently. And for the chatting, I do chatting for about 70
Okay,
accounts. Yeah.
got it. And
And over my
that's your,
career,
sorry, go ahead.
over my entire career, I've probably done full service management for maybe 35 or 40 different creators.
And do the women cycle in, make money, and cycle out as a whole? Are they there for the duration? What is the sort
Most
of,
of
I
them
guess, the
are in
career
it for
arc?
the long haul, I would say. There's been a couple that have quit. A couple people have had, their family and friends find out, and that caused them to quit. Uh, One of them has just kind of decided, okay, it's time for me to stop. But for the most part, it's a pretty good deal for them. Like they don't do any work really, or very minimal amounts of work, and they make a lot of money, and they get stuck in that. I would say they get just used to making free money, not having to work a normal job, and most of them don't have any high value skills to get paid a high wage anywhere else. So they
It's not
kind
like
of,
lawyers sidelining us.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So when you say they don't do much work, I mean, I'm obviously not putting myself in the category of these women, but it's pretty hard for me to produce hours and hours of content every week and manage everything and so on. So when is it because the past value is just continuing to provide value? People aren't going back to listen to my uh, takes on politics from 2013, right? Because it's kind of come and gone. The moment it's come and gone. But is it that just their existing body of work, get it, body, but their existing body of work is just generating income for them, so they don't have to do as much new stuff, or why is it? How many hours a week do you think they're working?
Yeah, for the most part, they work um, between 3 to 8 hours per week
Hmm.
for the most
And
part.
that's to get thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars a month.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a pretty tough bargain to say no to, I guess, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Hmm.
So, and the agency generally does everything for them. They just come in. They have a list of exactly what videos to record. Oftentimes, it will even be less than 3 hours per week that they'll have to do. But the most successful ones are definitely putting in some hours. Um, yeah.
And their prior work retains its value going forward. In fact, if they looked even better when they were younger, which is sometimes the case with women, then their prior value may even have more
Yeah.
back when they were fresh faced and, perhaps not quite as jaded or
Yeah.
have that sort of innocent air or something like that. So maybe their past
Exactly.
work has more
I mean,
value
I
even.
have one creator who has not created any new content in almost a year and a half. We just continue to repost her old content, and in fact, she has had a whole child and has a 1 year old kid now. It's This girl is kind of a personal friend of mine I've known for a long time, and like the dad is not in the picture and she basically is in a little bit of a stuck position. She has this child. This is the only. It's hard to imagine her switching from making enough money to pay and survive without doing literally any work. It does 0 hours per week. We're just reposting her old content over and over again, and it's generating her a livable income. And so, yeah, exactly as you said, past body of work can potentially last forever, especially with AI nowadays. There's ways that the creators don't even really need to make very much content. We can
Oh, like you can feed
AI them.
their pictures and videos into AI and then generate.
Yeah.
And does the AI, is it circling like a shark, your sort of business, in that the AI can interact with people, or are people more suspicious of that, the men who are typing? I mean, what's the relationship with your work in AI?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of managers who have fully AI creators, so the creator is not even real. It's just a fully fake AI person. I would say the technology is not quite there yet to the point where you can't tell that it's AI. Um, then there's also agencies that do a hybrid approach where they create AI clones of real humans and they just use this AI content to generate additional traffic. Then there is also the AI chatting side, where the AI is doing the chatting to the guy, and we use an AI tool as kind of a assist for the chatters. It's not quite good enough to where you can just have the full sales process handled by an AI chatbot, but you can definitely use it to. We use it for mostly qualification. So the AI will chat to them for the first 20, 30 messages, get to know them a little bit. It'll save everything to the notes. So we know that the human chatter will know where they live. And then it'll try and make that first sale. If it makes that first sale, we'll have a human come
Hmm.
in and take over the chat from there.
Right, right. And with the I mean, I guess there's a lot of safeguards, and you see people saying, give me the recipe for carrot muffins, and then the AI will sort of spit it out. So I guess there's a whole bunch of guardrails, or is it that the AI suggests text, which then the chatter can copy paste, or is there a sort of human element for that beginning, or is it mostly automated?
Um, Mostly automated. The tool that we use specifically, there are AI suggestion tools where it'll suggest something to the human, but there's also tools that can just fully handle the conversation with no human input. Um, the way the AI we use works is it talks to them, and then the AI will actually escalate. The chatter will get a notification saying, you know, this fan needs a human intervention on the chat
Hmm.
because you can kind of program the AI to escalate to a human during certain situations. Like if the fan gets suspicious, if the fan has a specific personalized request, if he buys something, we escalate it to a human. And there's a whole like secondary industry. Like imagine, in the gold rush, lots of people popped up selling shovels and gold panning equipment. There's a lot of people like that in this industry who sell AI chat software, who sell CRM software that allows you to, as one chatter, be logged into multiple OnlyFans accounts at the same time. Um, so there's a lot of, people selling the shovel in this industry.
Yeah, because I suppose the challenge would be that if the guy on the other end of the chat is more intimately familiar with the sort of whatever thoughts, habits, practices of the model, you'd want that to be tailored. Like I was sort of thinking, if it was just human beings, let's say you've got your 10 females, they each have slightly different personalities, different skills, different, one of them may be obese, one of them may be very slender, and so on. And so wouldn't the people need to be trained on what the model is like in order to provide more authentic responses? But of course, AI can do that mostly automatically.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we do train both the people and the AI on the model. biography. So they are fully aware of, how many pets the girl has, or if she's single or not, what her favorite color is. We have all of these,
Right.
all this information available for the chatter.
And what is the something else I've always been curious about? What is the level of stalkiness or creepiness or possessiveness or jealousy? I'll take you out of this life. You just have to be my slave and live in my dungeon. I don't know, whatever. But what is the level of obsessiveness that might come out of these men?
Surprisingly, not that high, I would say. Like, I think it feels very kind of not real to them. Like, I've never actually had a situation of stalking or anything where it felt physically dangerous, which kind of surprising.
Hmm.
We obviously keep the locations of the creators very private. Um, there's definitely some guys who are kind of depressed, and this is like the only person that they have to talk to. Um, and they do a lot of like emotional venting. Um, I would say that's much more common. So where they're kind of like they feel like this model is their only friend
Mm.
and they're very lonely. That's much more common than the creepy stalker vibes, I would say.
Yeah, it's more of the inert goon squad. And what percentage of the interactions would you say are focused on sexuality, and what percentage are focused on human connection, isolation, loneliness, some
I would
sort
say
of
most of
connection
them,
that way?
maybe like 30% are pure sexual, or maybe 50% pure sexual. And then the other 50% is both a mix of
Mm.
sexual and connection. Rarely is it just purely human connection, non sexual at all,
Okay.
I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a
Yeah,
sexually charged environment that would be like showing up to your
exactly.
therapist with no clothes on. And with regards to you see this sort of stuff online where somebody is a adult content creator and they meet their biggest fan, or like how does that? This sounds like I'm asking from a personal standpoint. Get me in touch with. But no, I'm just curious. How does it sort of spiral up to that, like actual, if that's allowed, the sort of meeting kind of thing?
Yeah, it's not allowed. So,
Okay. Okay.
if the fan ever requests that, we shut it down
Okay.
immediately because yeah, it's just not allowed by the platform, by OnlyFans.
Oh, so with OnlyFans, you're not allowed. Yeah, because they're concerned about, again, you just being an actual prostitute, perhaps, or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's completely not allowed.
Okay. And this is a leading question, and I mean this with just pure curiosity because this is a
Yeah.
very different world than what I'm used to. What does it feel like to be in the industry? And again, this isn't like it's gotta feel bad. I'm just genuinely
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah.
What does it feel like to be in this world?
Um, for a long period of time, I definitely liked it. I felt like it was very cool, um, very interesting and like unusual. And I was making a lot of money just online, had my own kind of successful business, lots of employees. I enjoyed it. Um, I felt like it was cool and interesting. I still feel like that to
I mean, there's lots of technical and business puzzles to solve, and lots of things to try and experiment with, and management. I mean, there's stuff
yeah,
outside of whatever the moral content is, what you're talking about or what you're experiencing. There are a lot of very interesting and challenging business problems that would be the same with just about any content producer. At least I assume that's the case.
exactly. Yeah. So I mean, it really is just the same as a social media management business in a different niche. Obviously, has some unique aspects to it, but I mean, I've definitely learned a lot of business skills managing a large team. Sales and closing clients on my service. Um, just keeping everything organized with systems and managing editors and all of that. Um, I really enjoy the freedom and flexibility of the job. I work from home. I don't have a boss. I get to take time off whenever I want, pretty much. And so I definitely like it overall. I feel good about it. My only negative is, I feel like I could be doing more and better. Just something that, I have a girlfriend. She's, we're planning to have kids at some point. I don't love the idea of like my children looking up at me as like, oh yeah, my daddy sells porn on the internet. Like I feel like it's not, you know, it's. I'd rather be doing something that I feel like I could be proud of
Hmm.
and, you know, a better role model for my children, basically. Um, that's the negative aspect of it, um, that I struggle with, essentially.
I'd like to get to that. Obviously, just have, sorry, one more question.
Yeah.
How did the girls or the women do after, on the sort of the tail end of their career? Do they land on their feet? You see all of these pictures of like, oh, she did porn and now she's a mother with two children and whatever it is, a tall astute husband or something. I mean, I guess you don't exactly keep track of the women who leave the arena too much, but what's your sense of how the afterlife is for these producers?
Um, well, I mean, I've only been in it for like 4 or 5 years, so it's not like I've seen necessarily the full cycle, um, because, you know, especially the girls I manage specifically, like, it's not like I've seen where they end up in 10 years down the line. Uh, from what I have seen, many of them do very well. They, spend their, 20 through 25, 26 making a lot of money, and then they are able to retire, essentially. They've made it for life. Um, a lot of them don't. They end up trying it, and then they quit, and they go back to working minimum wage or low paid jobs, and I think it probably makes it harder for them to find a relationship.
Hmm.
Guys generally don't want their girl to be an ex OnlyFans model. So I think there's a
I
lot of
mean,
struggle
maybe
in
for
that
short term, but
aspect.
not for long term, right?
Yeah, exactly, for short
Yeah.
term only. Um, so, some of them land on their feet. A lot try it. I mean, most try it. They don't make enough to make life changing money. And then they end up quitting and going back to whatever low paid job it is they had before, except now they have this negative mark on their dating resume,
Well,
basically.
and employment resume as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
because of course, back in the day, you could have a past and then just move towns, or something like that. You just go someplace new, like sort of a Blanche Dubois style. You could just go someplace new, and kind of no one would know you. But now, of course, even if you delete your account and so on, then there are search tools, right, where you can show someone's image and see if they've ever appeared in this kind of material, and then there's footprints in the snow, so to speak.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And there
Okay.
there are ways to, get this stuff taken down, but you're never gonna get it all taken down.
Right. Right.
So,
And what do you think is it just masturbation for the men? Like, what is this focus on the relational aspect, or is it just the complete fantasy girlfriend? Is it a break with reality? Is it suspension of disbelief, like when you see a horror movie and there's no real vampires, but you'll believe in? Like, what is it do you think that's driving? Because there's a massive economy, right? It's a huge,
yeah,
huge economy that's kind of buried. I think it's bigger than video games, bigger than movies, and all of that sort of
right.
stuff. What do you think is driving these men?
It's a very good question. I think a big driving factor is the how common it is for men to be very afraid of
Mm,
social interaction in real life. I think it's a common problem nowadays, and people spend so much time interacting online. Like it used to be when you're hanging out at a party, you have nothing to do, but you're forced to, overcome whatever anxiety you feel about walking up to someone and interacting with them. Um, you were kind of forced to overcome that fear. And then over time, you gradually become more and more comfortable and more confident with interacting with people in the real life. But now you have such a easy way out that gives your brain the same stimulus. Just pull out your phone, get that stimulus without the fear of facing rejection, without the challenge of actually learning how to interact with someone in the real world.
mm.
And I think a lot of men just really lack that confidence to approach women in the real world, and they lack the skills necessary to become attractive to women and to actually attract a real life mate. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I've
this is
often
kind
thought
of
that you couldn't really think of a better model in business than for the adult entertainment industry to sponsor the Me Too movement, because the Me Too movement has made men. I mean, I have had these arguments. I don't know if you followed them, like on X and other places. Arguments where men genuinely believe they can go to jail for talking to a woman in Starbucks. Like that, there's this absolute crazy fear of talking to females. And again, some of it's driven by the sort of more extreme stories or being put on blast or something like that. You glance at a woman in the gym or whatever. But the level of fear that really, I don't know if it's a combination of COVID and Me Too or something like that, but the level of fear that men have about talking to women is extremely high. And, that's always the big challenge is, okay, I've got these fears. Do I confront them or do I avoid them? And of course, everything you avoid, you give power. Everything you confront, you reduce the power. And as you say, it used to be the case, well, you just got to go talk to girls. And that has been bypassed, I think, partly by OnlyFans, partly by other things. And so it just generally gets worse. And then the more you do that kind of stuff, the worse it gets. And the other thing too, of course, is that the whatever people, whoever the women are that men subscribe to on OnlyFans, we assume is their ideal female, right? Whatever it is, it could be overweight, but that is the ideal. And for men to actually achieve their ideal in the real world, well, that's a whole lot of work, right? You got to
right.
maybe go to the gym. You got to maybe make a lot of money. You got to learn charisma. You got to learn how to be funny. You got to learn how to talk to women. You got to learn, how to be approachable and friendly and not creepy. And it's a lot of skill to go and get the quote ideal woman as opposed to typing in your browser and passing out, 47 seconds later.
Yeah. And I think it's been the case, right, that half of men throughout human history don't reproduce at all, right? So I think it just might be the biological reality that a very high percentage of men just don't have these skills, and maybe they're just not even destined to have them in the first place. Like in the competitive dating market, there's a large percentage of men who, yeah, they're just not capable for whatever reason of developing the necessary skills and character qualities that their ideal woman would find attractive, especially as you said, with it being the ideal woman. Like most of these men have a lot of work to do that they would have to do in their personal life in order to get that kind of girl.
Well, and of course, what people used to do in the past is settle. I mean, that the guy who was a three would settle with the woman who's a three, but now he can quote interact with the woman who's a 10. I think that just fries his circuitry, basically. In the same way
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
a woman who can subsidize a relationship with sex can just become an alpha widow, like have a bunch of guys who are top tier who'll sleep with her but not commit to her, and so on. So I think the guys, used to just find out where you are in the pecking order, right? So you ask an attractive girl out and you keep doing it until one will say yes, and then that's why you settle and so on. But I think that this vague idea. It's like trying to get someone to take a minimum wage job when they genuinely believe they're just about to cash in a winning lottery ticket. It's like, it's not going to happen. So it's kind of short circuits the whole process.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a very big part of it. And yeah, some of them definitely get pretty addicted to the feeling that this really attractive girl is paying attention to them. And um, yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad in a lot of ways that so many men are wasting so much time and resources on this kind of thing when they could really be out in the real world. It's not even that hard, like 1 year, 2 years of giving your absolute best in every aspect of your life and your fitness and just going out and cold approaching people and just learning how to do this. Anyone could do it, really. But it's difficult. Like the human biology is not designed to just have this alternative in your pocket where you can, take the easy way out.
Yeah, and
So
most women will judge a man by his confidence in many ways, more so than just sort of bland physical appearance and if there's some guy who's maybe not super attractive, but he's very confident, that's kind of intriguing for a woman because it's like, where does this confidence come from? I would like to find out. Like, there's some reason this guy
right,
is so confident, even though he's not some chiseled jawed clavicular Chad monster. And so, yeah, the confidence stuff goes a long way, and yet you can't develop it with this this approach.
right.
Now, obviously, I don't want to ask you about your finances in any detail, and don't obviously talk about anything you're not comfortable with. But is it like I'm getting multiple six figures in terms of what it is that you're making? Is it somewhere
Yeah,
in that vicinity?
annually, yeah.
Okay, yeah, got it. No,
I
hourly, I
mean,
would consider it a great gift to me if it was your
yeah,
hourly rate. It's like, well, thank you.
yeah.
That's a very kind donation. And what is your girlfriend from the industry? Is she
She is.
industry adjacent? What does she
Yeah.
think of the industry?
So, I mean, she was one of the first creators that I managed, actually. Um, and
So you were sleeping with your boss? No, I'm just kidding.
well, yeah, or the other way around, I guess, depending on how you think of it. But um,
It's an X. See, we get the X
exactly,
right in there. Okay.
yeah. And yeah, so I mean, obviously, she doesn't have a problem with people who do it to a certain degree. She recognizes the kind of downside of it. But I mean, for the most part, like I find she's very much a sort of traditional feminine partner in the sense of her roles of gender roles. Like she basically maintains the house and cleans and cooks and wants to be a mother and all of this, but then she also does OnlyFans on the side. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Does that answer it? What was
Oh,
your
so
question? Sorry.
she's
Yeah.
still producing content. Is that right?
Yeah, she still produces. I mean, I'm in some of the content as well. Um, yeah.
Oh, so if I want to see you like more unclothed, we can take that route. Okay.
Yes,
So so you being in or not in the industry is probably going to have less of an impact on your kids than her being in the industry. Is that fair to say?
for sure. Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean,
So
our plan is really to like to quit and wipe all trace of it, and I guess hide that from our kids, which I'm not. That's not optimal. That's not the ideal, but that is our current plan. Um, and I guess like that's what I'm curious about. Like, how should we approach raising our kids given the industry that we're in?
that's an interesting question. I'm certainly happy
Yeah,
to talk about that. Now, of course, you contacted me, and I appreciate you giving me the view, I guess the satellite view of the industry. And I guess part your question is about parenting, but obviously you've served my curiosity, and I appreciate that. So the rest of the call is to serve your needs and preferences. And how is it that I can best help you in questions that you have?
Um, well, I mean, I'm very interested in your parenting philosophy overall. There is also like recently over the past few days, my brother is having a very difficult time
Hmm.
with life. I mean, my mom is calling me constantly, freaking out. My brother is I guess suicidal basically
Oh
is
gosh.
I don't know if he's genuinely suicidal or if he's just kind of saying this as a threatening way.
Hmm.
Um, and my mother is a single parent. Um, my brother's dad isn't right. He's my half brother. The dad's not really around. Um, and he is addicted to um, day trading. I guess it seems like he has like a
Sorry,
gambling
I thought it
addiction.
was going to be a less dangerous drug like heroin. But yeah,
Yeah.
day trading is like he might as well be addicted to giving kidneys to
Uh,
strangers.
yeah. Yeah, no, it doesn't seem that bad, but I know I kind of went off topic.
No, no, it's
Um,
it's your topic. Whatever you want to talk about, I'm at your disposal for the rest of the time that we have together. So whatever you want to
sorry.
talk about is fine with me.
Yeah, well, first thing, I guess let's stick on the OnlyFans topic. Like, how should we approach raising our kids? Should we hide this from them? Is this an appropriate strategy? Let's say 1 year before we decide to have children, we delete all our accounts, get everything removed from the internet that we can, pretend as though it never happened.
Well, look, I mean, parents are allowed to have their privacy, right? I mean, parents don't have to sit down with their kids and say, here's all the girlfriends I had, and here's all the things we did, and right. So kids don't need to know that stuff. It's not appropriate to talk about with children, even when they become adults. You don't talk about that sort of intense personal or sexual side of your life or anything like that. So yeah, you're allowed to have your privacy, but of course, if stuff is truly private, it's not going to affect the kids, right? But your stuff and your girlfriend's stuff is not private. And as you said, you can delete your accounts and so on, but it's hard to know if it's gone forever. And of course, as AI tools improve and facial recognition or, I don't know, ball sack recognition or whatever's going on these days gets better and better, then they're going to be able to find your castanets in a pile of larger castanets. So, the odds are down the road that there is going to be search engines or things to be found that is going to make it harder to keep this stuff private. Once on the internet, it's on people's hard drives. It's wherever it's going to be. People can upload it wherever they want, and it's really tough to track down. But again, also the AI tools of suppressing this stuff will also be there. So it is a game of whack-a-mole to some degree. And as the tools to expose this stuff increase, the tools to suppress it will increase. So it's hard to know, but it's going to be tough to guarantee that it's not going to come out ever, obviously. And so, yeah, so that is a challenge. And how would you, let's say you've got a 10-year-old who finds out about this. I mean, the question is, well, what would you say? I mean, I had a twin brother who was a bad guy or did this negative stuff or something. I mean, what do you say? That's the question. I mean, what would you say, do you think?
It's a good question. I mean, if they're 10 years old, um, tough. I mean, I guess, I would just be honest. I would be like, yeah, in the past, this is uh, for a brief, you know, for a time of my life, like this is the career and the industry that I was involved in, and this is how we would make money. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think I would just be honest ultimately.
And
Um,
who knows how normalized this stuff is going to be down the road.
right.
In the past when, it was risque to have a Playboy in the house or something like that. And now it's like dial up hardcore everywhere you go. it's hard to know how this stuff is going to be normalized or not normalized. Or, of course, the more people who do it, the more normalized it becomes, and so on. It's like, oh, your mom did this. Well, my mom did this. Yeah, who knows? Like where this is going to go in the future. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's going to be explaining to do if it comes out, and again, it's hard to know because we're talking, more than a decade down the road, even if you guys start right now. So who knows what society's going to look like or what's going to be normalized or not normalized, because this is going to be a pretty common problem. Because again, we're talking sort of at the top 0.01%, like 1 in 10,000, but there's still the 10,000, right? So there's still a lot of people out there who've had their stuff out there for a while. Maybe if it's deleted, it's never deleted forever. So there's going to be a lot of people. Was it 10% of young women in America are doing at least OF or other things? So, that's going to be a lot of people who are going to have the same kind of problem if the
Right.
search tools get robust enough to reveal this kind of stuff no matter what. So you're not going to be alone in that issue.
Yeah,
And
yeah, there'll be a lot of conversations happening with,
a
people
lot of
and their kids,
conversations
yeah.
happening for sure. For sure. So, I mean, it's not just you with a big 1,000-watt laser on your
Yeah.
forehead. It's going to be a bunch of people who are going to have this conversations. Yeah, I mean, certainly the sooner you stop, the safer you'll be. I mean, I think that goes without saying, and I don't need to tell you any of that sort of obvious stuff. The other thing too is, you're here because I met your mom doing this work. So if you happen to be here, this work was kind of integral because otherwise I wouldn't have met your mom. I'd met some other woman and you wouldn't be here. So, I don't mean to say like everything is justified that leads up to the
Yeah.
kid, but it's kind of like if I say my mom and dad were not good with each other, it's like, well, maybe they shouldn't have got together. And it's like, well, okay, but then I'm kind of wishing non-existence on myself if my mom and dad shouldn't have got together because they were both a little unstable or very unstable. You can only wish for things to be different in the past so much to the point where you end up almost wishing you weren't around. And I assume that your kids, if you're a peaceful parent and a voluntarist and a homeschooler or whatever it is you're going to do that's going to be good for your kids, then they are going to be happy that they're around. And whatever
Yeah.
circumstances lead to that, they can't knock too much, if that makes sense. Now, tell me a little bit about your origin story. You said you grew up without a father?
No, so, I had a father. My parents divorced when I was 2 or 3, and, I spent the first 12 years or 11 years after their divorce doing a 1 week back and forth
Okay.
with them. Um, and then after that, I kind of did a 1 year back and forth. Um, so yeah, they were divorced and it was a back and forth. Um, both of my parents remarried and had more children with their new partners. So I have 6 siblings currently, oldest of 7, all younger.
I'm sorry, were you the only child of your parents directly?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, got it. And how good I mean, it's not a good divorce. How bad or non-amicable was the divorce as a whole?
Um, it seems like it was all right. I mean, they were able to be realistic and have me go back and forth without too much argument. I do know many of my earliest memories were shouting matches between the parents. Um, I don't think there was no physical abuse of any kind. It was just a lot of yelling and screaming. And the reason for the divorce was my dad cheated on my mom. Um, but they were able to kind of, hold it together in order to have me go back and forth without too much difficulty. Um, yeah, so I don't know. It's hard for me to assess kind of how amicable the divorce was exactly.
I mean, you weren't being dragged through court for years, so I guess they had
Right.
at least that much. And why do you think your parents got together in the first place if they didn't like each other later on? I mean, it's not like you become less yourself as you age. You generally become more yourself. So why do you think they got together in the first place?
It's a good question. I mean, they're both very intelligent and hardworking. Um, my mom is from a very hard childhood in Siberia, Soviet Union, deep north Siberia, burying potatoes in the snow for the winter kind of childhood. And my dad is from Queens, from a upper middle class family, so that's definitely very different origins for them. But my dad's also been he's always very adventurous. I think they met in Germany during the Berlin Wall fall. Um,
All right. So, how pretty was she
my mom,
when she was younger?
I think she was quite attractive. Yeah, I
Right. I
believe
mean,
so.
he
Yeah,
because if people get together and then they hate each other, we assume that they get together based on lust. I mean, that's the basic. Um, want to smash, wood crack, whatever. I mean, that is basically why people who come together who end up hating each other, what is it that brings them together? I mean,
right.
it has to be, I assume, it has to be lust. And I think that's one of the reasons why people who come from divorce tend to be hypersexual. Because divorce is when the sexual, quote, addiction wears off. And not all sexual desire is addiction, right? It's a bell curve.
Right.
But I would assume that there was probably a certain amount of hypersexuality in your development because your parents got together for reasons of lust, not virtue. And again, I'm not saying they're just terrible people, but in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah,
like their integrity with each other and the cheating and the yelling and in front of the kids, like that, everybody knows that you don't fight and yell in front of the kids and all that. So I would assume that hypersexuality or a focus on sexuality would have been part of your development, again, unconsciously at a sort of deep biological level, or perhaps consciously as well, because how you reproduce is based on lust, right? That would be the programmed message of your childhood that you get together and you have children based upon lust, not morals or virtues or emotional or intellectual compatibility or and also you make these vows but you don't really take them seriously, right? In a sense the vows are a kind of fraud. They're fraudulent in a way because if you
yeah.
make the vow, right, you make the we're going to be together forever no matter what, better or worse, sickness and health, till death do us part, and then someone cheats or whatever it is, and then the
Right.
vows aren't really being taken very seriously. So
Yeah.
then if the vows are fraudulent, it sort of ties in, I think, to why you may be a little bit more comfortable than some people would be with the semi-fraud of you're talking to the girl but you're not talking to the girl for these kinds of guys because you didn't grow up
Sure.
with people who took their vows particularly seriously. So if you would be the product of lust, then the fact that you work in a lust industry, and it's interesting because if you're the product of lust that was masquerading as love, then the fact that you're in an industry which is based on lust that is masquerading as affection, love, connection, whatever it is, would not be too shocking, if that makes sense. So I don't mean to unpack your entire history in like five 5 minutes, but I think it would be something like that.
Yeah, that is an interesting connection for sure.
And did your parents' remarriages take?
My dad's did, my mom's did not.
Okay.
Uh, So yeah, my dad, yeah, married. They have 4 kids. Pretty happy relationship overall, I would say. The kids are very well developed, playing the violin, homeschooled, healthy social lives. The oldest is, I think, about 15 now, so there's still some time for maybe some problems to show up, but it seems pretty uh, stable and healthy
Hmm.
from my perspective. And then it's on my mom's side um, that there are more problems, I would say. So I have 2 brothers on my mom's side. Um, her marriage did not survive. Um, and yeah, as I said, my brother is facing some difficulty as well. I mean, I faced a lot of difficulty during my high school, early college years. Um, Drug addiction, basically.
Mm.
Um, many hard drug use, partying.
And what do you think you were managing? I mean, as I don't know if you listen to what I do for a long time, so I'm sure you're aware of this particular argument that drugs are a form of self-medication for childhood neglect or trauma. And you said that there was no physical abuse in the household. If the theory is correct, what do you think you might have been self-medicating with the drugs?
So I think what I was desperate for was that feeling of human connection, having friends and people who cared about me and loved me. And most of the drug use, the reason why I was doing it was to help me make friends more easily, basically. And I was like very socially anxious. Um, but if I did a bunch of cocaine, then I was less anxious and could, have more fun and make friends more easily, or so I thought. But
Ah, yes, the powdered booger sugar charisma factor is not
yeah,
inconsiderable. And why
yeah.
do you think you grew up with, I guess, maybe fewer social skills than you wanted or needed, or more anxiety, obviously, than you wanted or needed?
It's a good question. I would say, yeah, I mean, not having like both my parents being there together, working on raising me as a team, I feel like that is just so critical to have during early childhood development. And I mean, I was constantly moving around back and forth between the two of them. And my mom would travel a lot and would take me. And I was, traveling all throughout the world. Um, so something, yeah, about that. Maybe like I wasn't getting both of their full focus during my early childhood. And so I was kind of just left by myself while the two of them, dealt with their arguments together or dealt with
Mm.
their, and I was kind of just left off to the side. Um,
And what perception do you think that gave you of yourself and your value if your own parents appeared to be more interested in fighting with each other than loving you?
yeah, I mean, it definitely gave me the perception that I was not a priority, not that important, um, and that I had to, you know, deal with everything on my own.
Mm.
That's it. So yeah, makes
Right.
yeah.
And when your parents got remarried, did you have any better relationship with step parents?
Um, no, not really. I never
Mm.
got particularly close with either of them. Um, Not that they were bad, but just like none of them really. I felt like I had a really intimate relationship with
How
either
old
of
were
them.
you when your parents remarried?
Believe I was 6, 7, 8, something like that.
Okay. I mean, wouldn't it be, I mean, it's debatable. I would make the case. Wouldn't it be the case, though, that let's say your father gets remarried? Well, I know he did get remarried to a woman. Isn't it the woman's job to create a good relationship with you because she's marrying into a guy who has a kid? I mean, wouldn't that be a really sort of primary focus and necessity? And wouldn't that be a requirement of your father's that, look, if we're going to get married, that you got to have a really good, close relationship with my son? Because again, his mother's gone, you said week on, week off, and then year on, year off for a whole year.
Yeah.
So wouldn't that be sort of a necessity or a requirement of your father's for his new wife?
Yeah, and like she definitely would try, and it's actually her that I'm much closer with than my stepfather. Um, and to this now currently, me and my girlfriend live in the same city as my dad and my stepmom, and we do see them regularly. And So I would say she definitely did put in that effort, and
But it
it
didn't
wasn't.
take for you, right? Because you said you weren't, at least when you were a kid, you weren't particularly close.
Yeah, yeah, it never really like took that deeply, but I don't know, maybe like a 5 out of 10, something like that.
And your stepfather, you said, was less so, right?
Less so for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because that would be an essential thing for anyone who's getting remarried who has kids is like, number one is we got to have, repair some damage and make sure that my kids feel. I mean, you felt valuable to your step parents or not so much? I guess you said your stepmom more.
My stepmom a little bit more, but not very valuable because, I mean, as soon as I started experimenting with drugs of any kind and failing out of school during like 7th grade, she basically wanted me to leave and go live with my mom.
Hmm.
So I was living with my dad and stepmom at the time. And as soon as I started being difficult and rebellious, she kind of wanted me to leave and go live with my stepfather.
But
Uh,
that didn't happen because they were sticking to the pendulum arrangement of back and forth.
no, it did happen actually, yeah. And then I left and went to so the 1 year followed until I was about 14, and then um, I pretty much spent the rest of the time with my mother.
So your stepmom said he's difficult, send him to his mom's.
Yes.
And your dad was like, sounds good.
Yeah, I think he found me pretty difficult as well. Um, so they were kind of in agreement.
Was it better for you to go to your mom's? I thought you weren't. I mean, it sounds like things were a little bit more difficult with your mom and stepdad.
Uh, I don't know. I think they maybe thought it would be better. I don't think it ended up being better.
Hmm.
I don't know. Hard to say. It was kind of hard to say if it was better or not,
I mean,
really.
it depends if you're being homeschooled in the country with your mom and stepdad, then you're going to have less access to drugs and things like that. But I assume that the drug use continued. And
Yeah, it continued until I was like 23 years old.
oh, so
Um,
like 9 years, you were doing pretty hard drugs.
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And what was it that got you out of that? I mean, good for you, but I mean, that's a wild thing to get out of after that amount of time. It's a lot of emotional development that gets bypassed.
For sure. Um, and I think I really just had enough of it. And, I had many like near death experiences driving incredibly recklessly. And um, hard to say like exactly what got me out of it. Um, but I just like at one point told myself like I'm done with taking the easy way out with this kind of lifestyle. And I know I have the capability to be better and do a lot more. And I guess I just made that commitment at some point and um, managed to stop. And I I kind of replaced the addiction with working and making money,
Right.
much healthier sort of addiction. And I really practiced my social skills and abilities and learned how to have the confidence to interact with people sober, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it is obviously it's not the same as drugs, but it's still a little bit. And I was struck by this when you were talking about the women. It's still a little bit of a lopsided cost benefit life that you have. As you say, the women work very little and make a lot of money, and you're making multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in your early 20s. And I'm not saying you weren't working hard, but there's lots of people who work hard in their early 20s who aren't making that kind of coin. So there still is kind of a lopsided cost benefit in a not dissimilar way. I was thinking with your stepbrother with the day trading and you with the the drugs and so on, that seeking the benefit with the least cost possible, the most benefit for the least cost possible in a way, seems to be characteristic of maybe your girlfriend and yourself to a smaller degree, your stepbrother to a larger degree, or something like that. Like the less effort for the greatest reward. And again, I'm not saying you don't work hard. You say you haven't had a day off in years, but to make that kind of money when you're young is kind of a lopsided cost benefit for most people.
Yeah, definitely, definitely true. I mean, I guess like, why wouldn't I seek out yeah, I mean, that's what got me to start this in the first place. I was like, how can I make the most possible money in the fastest possible way with,
Now you said why wouldn't you, right? And listen, it's a
yeah.
fair question. I mean, what you're doing is legal and all of that. So, I mean, why? What would be the case as to why you wouldn't take this approach?
Um, I mean, the case would be that if I could, let's say, make an equivalent amount of money in just a more, let's say I could make the same amount of money curing cancer, I would, of course, I could do something that has a great benefit to the world and make the same amount of money. It's not like it's impossible to make millions of dollars a year providing an extremely valuable service to the world. That is possible. Um,
Well, but I mean, curing cancer would take decades of study and research, and right, and so you
right.
stepping into this is a lot of money relative to your skill set and your effort. And look, your intelligence, obviously, without a doubt. I mean, you're obviously very intelligent. I put everyone who listens to my show at the top 1%. That's my sort of default position. I see no reason to kick you off the top 1% as far as that
Sure, yeah.
goes. So, as far as like, well, why wouldn't I get involved in what a lot of people would consider a fairly sordid industry that maybe has some significant negatives socially? I think that's fair to say. Like, as you pointed out earlier, and I'm not trying to catch you up with your words, but I try to
hmm
listen as closely as possible. You said that you were helping men stay off the path towards more self confidence and more romantic success or pair bonding or having a wife and kids and so on. And it is, you know, it's hard to say. But to me, and you know the industry way better than I do, so correct me if I'm going astray. To me, it seems semi-fraudulent at best.
Yeah,
In
absolutely.
that, I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So you said if it's consensual, it's okay, and fraud is not the same as consent, right? So if you are doing the hold up two fingers, hold up three fingers, and you're doing all of
Right.
this stuff to simulate that the guy is talking to the woman, that's fraudulent, right? Because, and you can say, well, deep down they know. It's like, but who knows
Maybe
about
they
any of
don't.
that?
Yeah. Some of them do, some of them don't. Right.
Right. So it's fraudulent ish. It's fraudulent adjacent. Like, I don't know what the
Yeah.
legal term for it all would be, but, and I assume if there were any legal challenges, then the stuff would all have been shut down long ago. And I don't know what the legal challenges would be to this. I'm no lawyer,
I mean, the
but
terms of service of the platform, allow for this essentially. Like the OnlyFans terms of service make it clear that you may not be talking to the actual girl themselves. That's essentially how it's covered. But in reality, I mean, I agree with you. Like, and when I said it was voluntary and consensual, like that refers to the relationship between me and the girls that are managed.
right. And
However,
of course, I mean, it's like, but when you get the iOS upgrade, how many people read all 74 pages
right,
and take it to, I mean, maybe with AI, you could summarize it and so on. But I think that if you were to poll the men and say, are you talking to the girl? Of course, some of them are suspicious, and this is why you have these phrases or these pictures and so on.
right,
And some of them are suspicious, but you do your best to eliminate that suspicion. And so it is, I mean, to me, again, I'm not using this from a legal standpoint because I'm not a lawyer and who knows what the laws are and where they apply. But in terms of morality, it's kind of fraudulent, right? To have these guys think that they're talking to the girl of their dreams when they're talking to some sweaty guy in a basement somewhere on the planet. That is, I mean, if the guy who was talking to the guy online were to turn on his camera, right? Hey, here I
Yeah.
am typing away, right? They wouldn't buy anything, right? So they have to have that illusion, and it's not a suspension of disbelief thing, but that I suppose would be the big question about. I mean, what do you think and feel about sort of that stuff that I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I don't like about what I do. I mean, it's dishonest and not beneficial to the customer. I mean, I would rather sell something that benefits the customer's life
Yeah, and
overall.
like as I'm really fascinated. Sorry to interrupt. I was really fascinated by when you said like it's only 10 to 15% of the money comes from these subscriptions, because these subscriptions to see naked or sexual content, I assume is, I mean, it's pretty upfront, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
Like you
yes,
pay your whatever it is, and then you get access to whatever it is, and that's not fraudulent. I mean, we could say it's not necessarily great for society, but it's not. Um,
deceptive. Yeah,
yeah, it's not deceptive, and so on. And but the as you say, most of the money comes from the chats and the personal sales, which does seem to me to be definitely on the deceptive side. And I mean, how many would you say, a million men you've over the past? I think you said 4 years that you've been in it. I mean, how many men do you think you have, or
what was that?
your company has interacted with in terms of the chat? You said 30,000 new followers for one of the
Yeah,
women a month, and so on.
probably a
Millions.
couple 100,000, something like that. Yeah,
Okay, and
maybe a million. That's
I would imagine more,
possible.
but who knows, right?
Yeah,
Again, it's just sort of back of the napkin stuff.
yeah,
I mean, do you think it's hard to know? I mean, in every instance, you could argue, well, it gets them out of their shell. Or at least they're talking to someone and they're getting some comfort and so on. But I mean, I would say probably overall, it's negative for the men. Would you
yeah. I
say?
mean, a lot of people in the industry will try and make that justification. They'll say like, "Oh, it's how many guys have you saved from committing suicide because they have someone to talk to?" I mean, I tend to think that's just, trying to justify themselves, and they're not, looking at the situation honestly. And
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
it
I
is
try to be
taking.
honest about it. I think it's a negative. Like, I don't think it's benefiting these men.
I would argue that it's probably harming them in the long run, in that it's bypassing, as you said, a necessary developmental stage of going out into the world and talking to people. And it is also, of course, rewiring their brains to have them respond to women that they would never be able to attain in real life. So they're, whacking off to a fantasy, and the seed is going into the garbage. And of course, the resources that they're pouring into this are not being poured into things that could be more advantageous to them in the long run, and so on. So, and the birth rate decline, I think, has a lot to do with this kind of stuff. And again, there's sort of tons of arguments. And again, there are some people who are, completely socially anxious. They're never going to go out anyway, and at least this gives them something. Although they could probably get it from a chat room without the sexual content, but so you could make some sort of edge cases and so on. But I think in the main, or for the bulk, it is probably doing a lot more harm than good for society as a whole. And again, I'm
Yeah.
not saying we all have to be responsible for society as a whole. I get all of that. And as you point out, certainly for the subscriptions, it's pretty upfront what's going on.
Right.
But yeah, I do think the chat stuff, which is where the bulk of the money is not good for the men, not good for society, and therefore I would argue, as a guy who's listening to this show and obviously has a conscience, probably not good for you and your girlfriend in the long run either, because the things that we do that are negative or harmful to society, particularly if there's a deceptive element involved, they do kind of accumulate in the conscience. And I'm not going to
Yeah.
be some big finger wagging guy here, because my general approach to this stuff is to be more curious than judgmental, but I guess my concern is it does kind of accumulate in the conscience. And when you see sort of the birth rate, or you see, guys who are incels, and part of that has to do with pornography addiction and so on, it does tickle the brain hairs a little, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm in a complete agreement with everything you say, and like there is uh, a price to be paid that I will have to pay, um, just for knowing the truth about what it is that I'm doing. Um,
And it also was keeping not just for the men, but, and again, the women are, I mean, they are participating in the fraud, again, not from a legal sense, but just from a moral sense, because they are allowing people to imitate them for money and knowing that the men think that they're talking to the girls when, as you said, the girls, I think you memorably said they don't have a lot of patience for talking to like 1,000 incels a day. And so it's harmful for their pair bonding. It's harmful for their conscience in terms of their making money from something that's kind of fraudulent. And, their birth rate, their mateability, as you said, you have this friend who has a kid, but the dad's not stuck around. And maybe that has something to do with pair bonding or making bad choices. Because, of course, I would imagine that in the online adult entertainment world, it's kind of like the strippers, right? I mean, they're not seeing the most noble side of males, to put it
right,
mildly. Like they're seeing the kind of scuzzy, self-deluding side of males, which is not to say all males have it, but like the strippers see, these sort of sad, lusty losers drooling over them while spilling beer on their fat pot bellies or whatever, and it gives strippers a pretty negative view of men as a whole because that's kind of most of what they see. They're not seeing the heart surgeons who are operating on children for free, and they're just seeing these scuzzy guys waving money and demanding a butt in their face. And I guess I always sort of assume, or just going to be concerned with not just the male's view of females, which is kind of manipulative or gold diggy, or I'm going to pretend to like you, but give me money, right?
right.
Also, what it does to the women in terms of their view of manhood, of masculinity, and the capacity to pair bond, and their the willingness of quality men to wife them up and have kids. And again, I sort of feel it's taking a bit from the future to feed the present, which is kind of like in the nature of addiction for me, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's just a short term, not a complete picture of the full consequences. Um, yeah, very similar to drug
So,
addiction.
I guess what is the plan over the next 6 to 12 months for you?
I mean, I have certain like financial goals. Like going into it, I always wanted it to be a temporary thing that would allow me to escape the matrix, if you will, and have financial independence. Like that was the purpose of it going in. And I would say it's pretty much gotten me to my goals. Um, 6 to 12 months, like really, it was over the next like 36 months is when I wanted to be transitioning out of it into something else. I mean, I have other business ideas, um, that I could transition in. It's just, I guess,
Yeah, but I
question
guarantee
of
you the cost
when.
benefit of those in the short run is going to be a whole different calculus. In
Possibly,
the long run, maybe not, but I
yeah.
mean, without the boost of lust, I mean, this is why there's so much money to be made out of lust. Is it's such a powerful human
Mhm.
drive. It's kind of why we're all here. So
Right.
anything that you have that doesn't involve the sex industry is almost certainly going to have a much tougher cost benefit ratio, for at least for a
Yeah.
time. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, but at the same time, I also have a tremendous amount of skills now that I didn't have at the start. Um, so yeah, I mean, I am still confident in my ability to have a very successful business in a different industry, but you could be right that it is, I can't be expecting the same amount of cost benefit.
I mean, I don't know if you know
Or
people who are doing, sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you know people who are doing what you do, but for regular social media. I
yeah,
mean, what is their income relative to yours? I mean, if you were doing this for just some Facebook or Instagram person that was not in the adult entertainment industry, what would what percentage of your salary would you be getting if you weren't in this industry, but with the same skill set?
but doing the exact same
Yeah, yeah.
work, right?
Well, I guess you wouldn't have the chatbot stuff, right? And which is your main focus. So, because I don't think people, I mean, I can't imagine people would pay to talk to me and I'd have a bunch of chatbots or whatever. But if you were just doing social media management or attempting virality or something like that for a history channel or I don't know, a
Yeah.
fashion channel or something like that, I mean, what percentage of your current salary would be making without the less subsidy?
Hard to say. I mean, I'm sure there are people who do that exact thing and make more than me, but you probably have to do it at a bigger level. So, like taking an equivalent level, um, equivalent size company, equivalent level clients. I don't know. I would assume less. Um,
I think generally
yeah,
5x for XXX or maybe
could be.
3x for
Yeah,
XXX.
could
So
be.
if you're making 300K, you'd be making probably 60K, 90K without the last subsidy. And again, because a lot of the money, but the majority of your money comes from this pretend chat with the girls, which isn't really a thing for other social media
Yeah.
stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I would imagine it's, I don't know, probably a sixth or a fifth or something like that. So, yeah, that's what I just mean. Like your skills in the market without the lust
Right.
subsidy is probably a very different category of income. And I'm telling you, not because I know for sure, but just because I don't want you to be too shocked when you're like, wait, what? That's all I'm getting without the lust subsidy? Because, for a while,
Mhm.
it might just be take a while to build up to your current level of income.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really plan to shift into the same exact industry. I'd like to try and do something substantially different.
Sure, but everywhere you go that doesn't have the less subsidy is going to be a tougher cost benefit as a whole,
Right.
at least for a while. Again, I mean, obviously, Jeff Bezos managed to break out of that cost benefit pretty well, as have other people, but it's just something to be prepared of that without the less subsidy, it's going to feel half impoverishing, at least for a while, I would imagine.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Is there anything else you wanted to mention with regards to your half brother, the addict who's
Yeah, I mean,
having
I
these
just want to
self-destructive thoughts?
how can I best help him to I don't know what to do. Like what how can I help him to like should he come to live with me?
No.
No. That's
No. No, because you're not an addiction specialist, neither am I, right? So we're
right.
just people jawboning this as a whole. The most effective thing that I think, again, as a complete rank amateur, so this is all mostly nonsense, but the most effective thing I think is I don't know if you've ever seen this show called Intervention.
Uh-uh. Never seen it.
Okay, sorry. So
No.
Intervention is a show where addiction specialists get together and they stage an intervention for
Right.
somebody who's going through a particular kind of crisis. Again, it could be any kind of, of addiction. And what they do is they sort of get together, everyone, and the person reads out how the person's addictive behavior has harmed them. And then they basically say, go to rehab or we're going to have nothing to do with you going forward. Like you have to
Right.
go and get like professional treatment from people who know what they're doing with regards to treating addiction. I mean, I would no more try and fix an addict than I would try and fix a burst appendix. It's like you go to the hospital and you fix that with a professional because dealing with addicts is so complicated and so challenging. And particularly for people who are close to them, because as you know, addicts generally tend to lie, deceive, manipulate. They're emotional terrorists. And the closer you are to them, the more they can manipulate you. Because, I mean, obviously, if you were to do something self destructive, it would absolutely break your heart and it would be tough for a professional, but at least they don't have that historical family relationship with the addict. So, in again, my amateur opinion is to say, turn it over to the specialists, turn it over to the people who've been trained for 20 years, who've dealt with 100 or 1,000 addicts and know what they're doing and have
Yeah.
access to, group therapy, individual treatment, perhaps medication if necessary for the short run. So I would say if you talk to an addiction specialist, maybe they'll recommend an intervention, maybe they'll recommend something else. I can't imagine that they would recommend just have the addict come live with you because that's
Right.
just introducing a whole load of chaos into your life, which, is like if a friend of yours calls you up and says, I have a terrible toothache, you say, come on over. I've got some pliers in the garage and we'll be fine. You say, no, go to a dentist, right? Go get that looked at by a professional. So if I were in your shoes, I would call up, addiction specialist and say, look, here's the situation. Maybe they'd recommend an intervention. Maybe it's something else. But when you and I think, are alike in that we enjoy solving problems, and occasionally perhaps we have too high a view of the problems we can solve. And because we tend to focus on the problems that we can solve, like, oh, I can work on secular ethics, I can work on peaceful parenting, I can solve these problems which are very difficult for some people, I then have to watch my own tendency to say, and therefore I can solve every problem. It's like, no, I can't. I mean, I can't at all. And so I would say you can't fix the problem of addiction. It requires specialist training, and it requires a whole panoply of people who know what they're doing, which is, I don't think it's you. It's certainly not me. So it would be something to turn over to the professionals. And either then this guy is, your half brother. Sorry, this guy. I don't mean to sound dismissive of him, but either your half brother is going to listen to the professionals, or if there's an intervention, everyone's going to say, here's how it affects me negatively. Here's what you need to do. We've got the car waiting. You go to rehab and so on. Either he's going to listen to that and do that, or he's not. And so the way that I kind of view it is, you can write a diet book. You can't run around smacking food out of people's mouths. You can write an exercise book, but you can't go work out for other people. And you can say to people, this is what you need to do to deal with the addiction. You can't make them do it. And sometimes people just need to kind of hit rock bottom, and then they bounce into some place more positive. But if I were in your shoes, I would not take this on as a project of mine, because it's like if a friend of mine says, I'm really tough. It's really tough for me to translate this book from Croatian to Japanese. I wouldn't be like, well, let me sit down with a dictionary and solve that for you. It's like, I don't speak Croatian. I don't speak Japanese. So I would say consult with somebody who's really good at that kind of stuff and defer to them and hope for the best, I think.
Yeah, that's our plan. I think that's our plan. It's just a matter of convincing him to go. That's difficult. He doesn't want to go.
But that's why the intervention stuff is so powerful, because then right now the addict survives on exploitation for the most part. The addict survives on exploitation as long as there's somebody else whose pockets you can kind of half pick with some emotional manipulation or threat or so on, then you can survive. And I think, again, I'm not an expert, but I think that the general purpose of the intervention is to remove people who can be exploited from the environment. Like, you go to rehab, or we're not going to have anything to do with you, and therefore you can't exploit us anymore. So it's rehab or nothing. Because if it's rehab, or you can continue to exploit us to get resources for your addiction, people will generally choose, yes, I'll continue to exploit people because I sure know how to do that as an addict. But if it is like you get nothing socially, no resources, or you go to rehab, I think that's the best option. And I think that's the purpose behind it. I'm not an expert on it, of course, but I think that's the purpose behind it. Yeah. So that would be, I think the intervention is probably a pretty good thing. And in the show Intervention, which I think it's worth watching for anybody who's ever dealt with addicts, or who might, just about everyone then. Sometimes it works. A lot of times it works. Occasionally it doesn't, but I think it is the best shot.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's what we're going to try and do, honestly.
All right. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention? I really do appreciate your openness in talking about this kind of stuff, because it is a world, of course, that a lot of people overlap with, but very few people understand. And I certainly appreciate that view.
Yeah, I thought it would be interesting. I don't hear it talked about a lot, so I feel like people will think it's interesting to hear about.
And how was the conversation for you as a whole?
I enjoyed it greatly. Yeah, it was crazy
to
I'm
AI. I'm a guy in Singapore in a basement. All right. Yeah. Well, thanks, man. Listen, I hope you'll stay in touch, and I hope the very best for your half brother. Yeah. It is a very tough thing. Day trading is an absolute curse upon the psyche in most cases. So I hope that works out, and I hope you'll let me know how it goes.
I agree. It's kind of a predatory industry as well. Am I in the video?
I have the video. If you don't want video, I can completely understand that. I won't publish it with that.
Yeah, let's do no video. I honestly wasn't expecting a video call.
Yeah, no, it's
dressed
fine.
in the way I am.
The video, and I can alter your voice, whatever you like.
Nah, no need to alter. Just no need for.
I'll have my video, but not yours. All right.
Yeah, cool.
That way, nobody will mistake me for somebody who stars in porn. All right. Thanks, Emil, and I hope you'll stay in touch, and all the best. All right.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.